welcome back, folks. We've got another great guest here with Jim Nasr from Acoer. Have I pronounced that correctly, or how do you say the name properly?
Yeah, we'll pronounce it Acoer.
Acoer. Okay, I love it. I love it. So it's an amazing, interesting company that you've created here, especially when it comes to like healthcare and blockchain. But before we get into all of that, I'd love to get to know how you, Jim, got started in the blockchain space. What led you to look at moving into this area?
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you having me on. I was at the CDC, and this is 2016. I was the chief software architect there, and myself and a small team, if you like, an incubation or innovation incubation team, we're looking at basically we're building out effectively an open API, an open technology model for modernizing the scientific applications at the CDC. And one of the, and I'm sure it's very similar in Australia as is in most of the world, one of the underlying issues with health data, including public health data in the US, and for that matter, clinical research and really across the board, is that data is siloed. So even though at the CDC, we needed data at the federal level to be able to do reporting at a federal level and make advisories and drive various studies, the data itself, was, and still is coming from various jurisdictions, states primarily, and then within that, the data is coming from counties and such. But there really wasn't at the time, and even to this day, no real like one standard way of so COVID is a good example. We all lived through that, and even though it was really life and death to get that information communicated across different silos, it really wasn't captured or reported in the same way. So all to say, the siloed data problem existed. So one of the thoughts was, well, if we know the data is going to be siloed and it's not realistic to put everything into a giant data lake, which really isn't realistic, then how do we deal with this underlying problem of siloed data? How do we, for instance, show, with some kind of authority where data came from, who touched it, when, was it compliant, things like this. But then also this bigger concept of, how do you incentivize people to provide data, including jurisdictions, but also individuals, for instance, underserved communities. So all to say, that kind of led us to think about blockchain. At the time, really the only option was Ethereum, the only realistic option. So we started poking around with Ethereum, built our own network, mess around with the very early MetaMask kind of wallet days and things like this, and learned a lot of things. And then really kind of came to this conclusion, Mark, that blockchain for healthcare, anything public, anything that has the word public, when you want to have compliance, auditability, transparency, providing equity for content, people who are providing value in content, blockchain makes sense. Public blockchain makes sense. However, it needs to be the right implementation. It needs to be economically viable, first and foremost. It needs to be baked into the plumbing and infrastructure, so it just works behind the scenes. Just like SMTP works for email. Like none of us, go and look at the SMTP protocol to ensure that the email arrive. What kind of trust it does. So it kind of, in mind, that's the way it kind of needed to be. It needs to scale, things like this. And that was really kind of, if you like, the roadmap or the path that we took to figure out, well, if this theory makes sense, how do we actually implement it so it becomes real and it becomes part of realistic and kind of useful healthcare software?
That's really interesting. The data background, I resonate with that because I've come from a data analytics kind of background. I worked in finance. I was a consultant helping companies do more with their data information and workflows. And it's certainly a problem. We've got the same thing here. I'm lucky enough to be working on a project where I get to see this problem, but it's the same, the silos. And, it's interesting you talk about like the incentives to get people to share. In some cases, it's like a mandate, a government mandate to share that information. But I like the carrot versus the stick. So if there's like incentive structures to help them, share that data and drive that. And another thing that's interesting, and I guess we'll get into that, but the blockchain, people think, okay, oh, public blockchain, well, you can't put healthcare data on that, but that's like a surface level or lack of understanding. And when you dig below, there's great reasons for why. So why don't we get into that? You've got this blockchain powered like healthcare software that ensures authenticity and security of health data. What kind of ways are you using blockchain and cryptography to achieve this sort of thing? I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, certainly. But it would just, you made this very good comment about there are kind of rules and regulations that you have to, or mandates that you have to comply to. We obviously have the same kind of thing in the US and when it comes to federal reporting and things like this. However, again, there's another issue in healthcare around data quality, and we see this often in clinical research where the quality, yes, the data may be there, but the quality isn't great. There's a lot of redundancy and duplicative work. So the net result is ineffective. And again, we saw this COVID. So back to your question though, is really kind of our vision since the early days in 2017, it has been essentially blockchain as an abstraction. So we obviously know and respect things like wallets and key management and dealing with recovery of private keys and all these other things that are kind of part of the lingo of blockchain and certainly underlying tokens for tracking utility and building network effects and security, all of this. However, really in our minds, blockchain is kind of like what you would consider your choice for a database, if you like. Like, you and I probably, no matter how much, affinity we have for like one data like SQL Server versus MongoDB, we're probably not going to like get into some kind of, like a religious fight about it because we understand that there's an underlying utility. Yes, you like, Mongo. Yes, I like, Cloudera or whatever, but we know there's a utility. So that's the way we think about it. So that being said, kind of our whole approach really has been, can we find a protocol or one or more protocol where we can hit this idea of abstraction, where we can bake in the DLT layer for instance, for the original, like when we kind of make a transaction, a health transaction, for instance, read a patient record, can we at the same time basically create a hash entry on a public ledger that provides an encrypted, privacy-preserving reference to that transaction? So we're by no means suggesting, and I think this is what you were saying too, that we're going to put people's protected health information or personally identifiable information on a public ledger. I think that would be ludicrous. There's all kinds of reasons why that wouldn't make sense. Not to mention the data really is somewhere else. It's in electronic health records. However, you can, if you're doing this correctly and then using open APIs, you can, as you're doing things in a private database or an app, for instance, for tracking your, your steps or whatever, you can, for certain transactions that mean something to you, whether it's compliance or whatever, you can essentially record, at the same time, you can record a transaction pointer at the very least on a public ledger. So that's really what we do. And then the next part of it is, can you do it at scale? Can you do it so it's not just a proof of concept? It's not just like a Mickey Mouse thing that you can only do with 10 pieces of record or 10 records or within like 2 hours, but something you could do as if it was, for instance, a credit card transaction, but with a Visa card. So you could do it effectively in real time. So you see the results in real time. It can have the message queuing happen in real time. And I think that's the next piece of the challenge that we've been working on, which is, okay, great. We're able to demonstrate these cryptographic proof mechanisms to show transparency and auditability, but now can we do it so it's production quality at a cost that's either negligible or is very much absorbable within the software we're building.
Yeah, it's interesting because people coming from a non-blockchain space like developers, this is something they've got to get used to. The transaction costs, the gas fees, the things that you don't normally face coming from that more traditional kind of software world. But is that why when you guys were looking around, like initially starting off with Ethereum and the journey to something like Hedera, did you guys look around at all the different the pros and cons of different kind of blockchains and stuff? Was this something that you've had to look at? Or did you have developers help out as well? Like, how did that journey kind of happen?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt that the answer is yes on all fronts. We are Acoer is a software development company focused on innovations healthcare. So we don't consider ourselves a quote blockchain company. I mean, yes, of course we use blockchain. We very strongly believe that a public blockchain, and I am certainly not a fan of quote the private blockchain. I think it's proven that it is largely superfluous. It doesn't really move the needle. But a public blockchain, we're big fans of. However, like I mentioned, we think that you have to find where the intersection of the utility is with things that you're building that somebody would pay for and would actually meet a functional need. So that journey kind of took us from Ethereum. We looked at some layer twos. Where we right in 2017 when Hedera came out, we got the SDK. This is in the days of swirls and the private kind of like the private manifestation of what is now called Hedera, the Hashgraph algorithm, and really loved the technology. We're like, wow, this is incredible. And then listen to Dr. Barrett, and he is by all accounts an incredible authority on cryptography. He's been doing this stuff for a very long time. And asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance, which is the underlying consensus algorithm, is mathematically proven to be the optimal way of getting to consensus. However, all of that theory doesn't still kind of necessarily mean anything unless you can actually really build around it. So that was our theory or if you like, our hypothesis that there was something here. And if we invest the time and our own engineering effort and work, that we could actually make this real. And again, fortunately, knock on wood, that's kind of the roadmap. That's the way the journey has evolved. But certainly it's not been easy. That obviously there's been a significant amount of maturity, both in the market and the product, our company that we've had to deal with. Of course, a bear market, multiple dips in the bear market, etc. But here we are. I think Acoer's been around since 2015. We've been at this like all in since 2019. So it's 4+ years of actively building on this stuff. And yeah, I think we're kind of seeing success, but we're seeing sustained and kind of like repeatable processes and repeatable products that we've built that other people can build from. And I think that's really, to me, that's the exciting thing. It's not just a white elephant that, we built something, have one client. It's the fact that we've been able to prove it, extend it, and have something that's highly demonstrable and pretty easy for us to kind of get our point across without getting into all of the minutia of every piece of our tech stack.
That's pretty amazing. It's not easy to survive as any sort of startup, let alone something that is, in a nascent kind of space. I know you guys are very pragmatic. Whether it was blockchain, you would find the best solution at the time. Just like many of us are doing. I think it's good to kind of have that middle ground because it means we can be honest with ourselves about what doesn't work. The main thing is, as you said, to get to that functional need. Now, you guys have done very well, and the Acoer platform, I'd love to learn more about what some of the success stories have been, maybe some of these examples where you'd love to share with us, because people need to know these things, that blockchain is not just this bubble. It's not just this speculation thing. It's actually proper cryptographic software that can solve real world problems and has been doing. Could you give us some of these case studies or, some examples, please?
Yeah, no doubt. So firstly, at Acoer, really we have three products, right now, and there's been an evolution. And some of these products, for instance, Acoer platform really is if you like, a collection of things that we have built over a course of a number of years. For instance, this technology called Rise Hash that we built in 2021, our analytics and visualization technology, which is called Hashlog, plus a lot of this, what we call data stamping, but really, if you like, it's an integration to a DLT, all these things that we have built, a lot of UX components and things. And so, like I mentioned, we have three products. One is the platform, which is, if you like, our kind of the accelerator for us ourselves to build products, but also to help some clients to build on top of us. Then we have this technology called Health Data Explorer, which is very much a public health reporting kind of case management software, effectively. And then we have Hashlog, which is our underlying data visualization tech. But going back to your question, Mark, just recently, in fact, it was announced, there was social media announcement, and there's a lot more planned. We have a client called Terra, or MyTerra, and what they do, the CEO at this startup, his name is Jeff Miller. He is one of the world's leading authorities in industrial hygiene. He is paid as one of very few credible industrial hygienists to basically for instance, go to rigs around the world and do assessments of chemical exposure, of various compliance to exposure of employees to various kind of pathogens or chemicals, and whatever the industry specific kind of exposure elements happen to be. But this is a very this has been historically a very manual process, a lot of time required. I think that the quote that one of Jeff's clients had given him was that it typically takes 40 hours to do one assessment for one employee. So very sticky, very complex, a lot of kind of business logic and business rules that have to be embedded. So through our relationship of building an Acoer platform, including all the things I described, analytics and data sampling, we have taken one task assessment from 40 hours to 4 minutes. So you can do it online. It's self-guided. Every time there's an kind of, if you like, a write transaction, or there's an amendment or reporting, behind the scenes, we do encrypted proofing to Hedera. All of it is transparently available. The reporting to OSHA and other regulatory agencies is built in. So that's a real example, and it's not an example. One of the reasons why I really like this example is that it didn't really need any, or we did not, as Acoer, didn't provide any subject matter expertise. We had zero background in industrial hygiene, in occupational health. So, however, working with Jeff and his team, we built this application in a very short time, quite a sophisticated application with really, I would say, pretty aggressive budget, like a very, very lean budget, and it's deliberate, and now he's able to demonstrate it. So kind of proving the point that you can have a platform that other people can build on, as well as the experts that are doing this. So that's one. We have built a solution called Help Ready around neuroblastoma cancer research. It's a mobile app with a back-end research portal, or a portal for researchers that allows them to look at anonymized, aggregated cancer data. So we have several public health applications and so on. But I'll stop there. But those are some examples.
That's really amazing, and I saw the products that you've got on the website, and people will see it as they're watching this video. But really interesting stuff. I mean, obviously, I've got an affinity for like the data visualization side, but I love that you've got that platform that helps with the sharing of this data. As we said at the start, as you mentioned, the silos that are there, it's the same thing in healthcare here. So we'll certainly have to chat offline because I've got some projects where we could potentially do something together. But also other industries as well. It's the same kind of thing. You mentioned there, like working with the SMEs, like the experts, and not having that expertise in house. That's the beauty of this space, right? We're so collaborative. Many of us have done things. We've even like separately wearing my company hat, not centralized. We've done stuff in the construction space, but we could only do that because we work with the SMEs. We bring the technology, work with them to understand the problem, to see how different pieces of technology could come together. So it's really interesting stuff that you've got there. Another thing that I think is really interesting is interoperability. It's a key feature for many good, blockchain solutions. But how does the Core's approach to interoperability, say, differ from traditional methods? And how do you think it contributes to breaking down these silos that, we're talking about in healthcare? But I think people would resonate with this, with, their experience of other industries as well.
Yeah, no doubt. But I do echo your point that you could take these kind of solutions and put them into other industries, so long as you're working with the subject matter experts, and it's collaborative. And honestly, in this blockchain space, never mind the Hedera space, it's very nascent. We need to be collaborators, and we all I come from an open source background. Last 15 years, more or less, working on open source, have contributed code to open source. So you mentioned interoperability, things like open APIs, being open API spec kind of compliant is like literally one of the very first things that we think about. So it's open API, for instance, FHIR with the fast healthcare interoperability resources at the health data level. We're one of the pioneers in that area, and we're doing this, like I mentioned, back at the CDC days, 9 years ago as well. But fundamentally, we believe, I think like yourself, Mark, that, innovation is at the speed of open source and open technologies. It's not about proprietariness. If all you're thinking about is what kind of patents I can put out there and how I'm going to be proprietary, I think you're going to miss the speed of innovation. So we're very much about collaboration. I think the space, is so gigantic, and progress within it has been so limited, all in. And of course, there are a lot of scammers and a lot of people who are really, they're opportunists. So you take those aside, the legitimate people building real solutions are few and far in between. So being collaborative is good for all of us. It's the space going down is bad for all of us. So we very much believe in that. And going back to your question about interoperability, so everything that we build with an API, an open API approach. So and this is why the Acoer platform has been successful, because we don't need you to know everything we do. You don't need to write in the code that we write, whatever. You just need to be able to interact, with webhooks, with open API, with machine to machine APIs going to a standard API gateway. Very much what you would expect to see in a modern microservices architecture. That's exactly what we do, and the DevOps the same. We would do manage Kubernetes across multiple cloud infrastructures, all of which is basically built in this idea of having serverless APIs that can be interacted with very, very simply. So that's part of it. The other part of it at the actual data level for healthcare in particular is very much pushing FHIR and building the backend data APIs or the pre-processing and post-processing data work that we're doing using FHIR. In fact, just recently, in collaboration with the CDC, we built a new FHIR profile for district attorneys to interact with mortality data and with the Office of Medical Examiners. So, and that's just, again, it's just building on standards and really believing that if we're going to move this space forward, we kind of need to be standards oriented. We need to use the communication protocols that exist. And again, the best example of all of this is the internet itself. It's based on RESTful APIs. That's why, you have billions of servers around the world, seamlessly talking to each other, and through a browser or through URIs and things like this. So very much believers in that. And I think, in many industries like high tech, I think that's largely understood. Unfortunately, healthcare is not. Even to this day, you kind of have to make a case for open APIs, which is a little bit weird, but nonetheless, I think that's the direction we take.
Yeah, that's amazing that you mentioned standards there because a lot of people don't. I would say the majority of people don't talk about standards in this space, but seeing how other technologies, other things that were nascent before that are now synonymous, like the internet, they had to go through that need to create standards from which we could then really unleash the power of this across different countries. Like even the internet, there may be standards that are recognized, globally to interoperate, but you will have countries that will have different rules and regulations around what is allowed on the internet versus others. As much as we would want open, countries have their ability to be a bit self-sovereign. So there is that need for that, but we have to have standards. Otherwise, we're not talking the same language, just like the Tower of Babel, right? So I love that you mentioned that because this is exactly what is needed. We just ran I was just in Melbourne, another city. I'm back in Sydney now. And someone in the crowd asked that question around standards and what people think about that because they said, and I agree, it's not often spoken about. So I love that you're doing that. But I guess it comes from having that open source kind of background. So that really helps. And I agree with you what you said there. Let's talk about
But
some other.
one thing I do want to mention, sorry to interrupt you, Mike, because I want to make sure that people neglect your original question about like blockchain interoperability. So, Megan, we could spend an hour or more, many hours actually talking about blockchain interoperability because, there isn't really that much. What I would say, what we do is when we need to, and it's very much if and when we need to deal with, for instance, smart contracts, we are EVM compatible and because that is really where the developer community is, and being EVM compatible, it makes sense. Though our real thinking is honestly that as much as we can, we like to do open APIs and be off the chain for interoperability. Sometimes we mess around with wrap tokens and things like this. But honestly, our thinking largely is how would you design a proper application and consider your interoperability at the right layer, not necessarily at the blockchain layer. So just again, some people very much go down a rabbit hole of, well, is Hedera as example compatible or interoperable with, I don't know, Polkadot or whatever. And I feel like a lot of times it's a wrong question because you're asking a question in vacuum, not in context of a useful application and what you're really trying to do.
I agree with you there. And, this space, it should not think about itself just within the vacuum. I think, we can get into the really nuanced kind of details, but we always have to remain aware of that big picture of like, what are we actually doing here? And is this an important enough kind of question? But, taking that 20,000 foot view, if you will, is really interesting. And speaking of like taking us up above into a different kind of view, I'm curious about like the AI, right? So we run this show in partnership with another association called the Data Science and AI Association of Australia. And as per the name, they were doing a lot of stuff before. They were actually well around before the Australian DeFi Association, our group, and machine learning and traditional data science and data visualization, as you mentioned you come from. But AI, more generative AI, has really come up in the last year, since November 2023, when November 2022, when ChatGPT came about. I was just curious as to how AI is being used by your team in the operations, in how you deliver your products and work. Is there a bit of crossover there with AI and what you guys do?
Yeah, I think the answer, Mark, is yes, in that we are using particularly ChatGPT a little bit, and also tools like Mostly, for instance, for creating synthetic data. We do have some things I'm not going to be able to speak about right now because it's not public.
No worries.
Um, it's around, um, I guess, a more serious use of AI within what we're doing with one of our products. The product is in R&D, so I don't want to speak ahead before. Our culture is to speak about things once they're done, not aspirationally about things that may be done. What I was saying though, and this is really what we're seeing as an inflection point, is, and you rightly describe us as a data company. That really is the way we largely look at ourselves. But we have clients, for instance, several clients in and some very, very big research entities in cancer research specifically, where AI is a big part of their world. So the question then to us is, okay, well, you guys, like we don't do, as example, we're not doing detection of early cancer cell mutations using AI. We don't have expertise in that, nor do we want to. However, our clients wanted to have an R. So now the question is, well, we know Gen AI is going to be involved. And we really have two preemptive questions that we pose to our clients in this. One is, this data is decentralized to begin with. And we all know if you're going to move all this data, particularly things like genomic sequencing data, it's very, very large. And you can have multiple scans, maybe up to 100 scans, genomic sequencing scan per mutation. That we're talking about petabytes of data. So if you're going to move all this data from different sources to the cloud, it's going to cost literally into the millions of dollars per year. So the first problem is, have you considered that this size of data and the fact that you really can't justifiably or reasonably centralize it? There has to be another approach. And the other approach is basically leave the data just decentralized. So if you leave the data decentralized, and it also kind of gets to this area that if the data is decentralized and lives within the space you created it, it's almost definitely within a validated system. It's already HIPAA compliant, it's secure, you have all of the paperwork that kind of proves it. So, centralization is expensive. And if you go to a different environment, you're going to have to revalidate. So that's the first part, and then you want to get this AI work. The second part is, when you're doing this, if the data is decentralized, how can you prove that when you're using Gen AI, that the derivative kind of creations, that synthetic data or derivative content or insight that's being fed back into your large language model, as an example, that still ties back to some kind of source of truth? Because that's a real problem. And I think that's where we're coming in and saying, look, we can address both of this with this idea of doing very large scale crypto proofing, using our core platform, using this underlying Hedera and some other clever cryptographic techniques where effectively we're able to show the origin of your data, and in fact, we could do at every read level, but let's say every mutation, every change, every amendment, every material transaction on the data, including the Gen AI, the derivatives that are created. We're able to show the provenance, and also in many cases show the consent of the actual data owner, like for instance, a cancer patient's consent for the data to be used in this way. So that's the way we're going to our clients and saying, look, this is the way we're able to kind of positively contribute to your AI work. We're not going to be building the LLMs. That's not our domain. However, we're able to impute this computational truth in the work that you're doing.
I love it, because a lot of people think about, how does AI help whatever industry it is? Like, how can I help it with operational efficiency or research or even creating, the content, like the blogs, the LinkedIn posts and things like that do take time and are important to get out there. But it's great because you've touched on a point there around how does blockchain actually help the AI space. And that's something that people need to, or we're seeing a little bit of thought around that, but it's great to see that you guys are doing that very thing there. And in terms of that, did you want to add anything kind of further to it? Because it's really interesting, the concept of how blockchain and decentralized technologies are actually being seen right now as necessary when if you're in the AI space, they're just starting to come up with like what these problems are as they go out to industry. But do you have any more that you want to add to that? Because it's really fascinating, people realizing, oh wait, we need blockchain. These things are actually quite useful for this AI stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on here, and I mean, honestly, it's evolving on like a daily basis, and so the conversations we're having now, with our clients, and I mean, even a year ago. So you mentioned that ChatGPT came out in November of 2022, but really people kind of their imagination was so maybe 6 months later, it's like, oh wow, I could do all these things, including, for instance, using ChatGPT to generate your kind of clinical data source that then you feed into the LLMs. It's really weird. I think it's only now, though, honestly, and this is like where we're really at this, kind of the crest of the understanding of the implications of having AI do all these things that seem magical, yet at any point can become rogue. At any point, the data could be poisoned. At any point, you could have violations of data owners' rights, never mind consent. I mean, consent is like nobody's even talking about consent. So the conversations we're having, that the targeted ones, particularly around cancer research, is all about this, is we all want to move cancer research forward, right? Clearly. I mean, that's an existential human threat. And everybody recognizes now with AI, particularly Gen AI and all these other kind of machine learning technologies that have been around, but have really got better, that we could actually significantly accelerate even stage 4 cancer like treatment, right? There's some evidence of this where there's some very highly targeted medicine that, for instance, around prostate cancer, that some researchers have developed literally in the last year, largely through the ability to use these LLMs that they really couldn't even consider like 2 or 3 years ago, and literally adding years to people's lives. So very much a human-centric impact, never mind the financial impact. But this dawning of, well, how do we make sure that there's truth in this? I think it's just beginning to come together. So one of the things that I'm excited is people like yourself, honestly, Mark, and us and some other folks who kind of get, or maybe are exposed to both sides, being kind of very, I guess, open and I guess putting themselves out into the space to raise these kind of questions, because I think it's pretty easy to shovel this under the carpet and say, well, we'll just do the AI and figure out like things like data rise and rogue data and stuff like this later. But I think I can see, certainly when it comes to things like human centric or life saving treatments, that you absolutely must get this right, because even one error, even one like rogue AI can lead to people dying or mistreatment. So you can't be fast and loose about it.
Absolutely. I think you touch on a lot of really good points there, and hopefully people that are listening to this that maybe have come from the blockchain space first realize the value and potential of LLMs in terms of what they're doing. I think there's more of those already, but I think the other way around is great. There's a lot of great builders, clubs, and people that come together to help come up with solutions that are going to solve problems in industry when it comes to building with AI. Hopefully they see this and consider that, there's elements of emerging tech like blockchain that can really make it much more powerful, and it can make them stand out in a way, because there's a lot of interest in this. It's like the Gartner hype cycle. We've gone up the hype cycle curve. That will potentially come down, or as it probably will, as people come out of the space that have realized that their AI idea is not working, and then we'll have that level of maturity. But wherever we are on the cycle, I think it's important to have technologies like this. But let's paint a picture of the future. Let's look forward. Now, when it comes to the healthcare industry and emerging technologies like blockchain or DLT per se, because Hedera is not really a blockchain, distributed ledger technology, but also AI, these emerging technologies. Could you paint a little bit of a picture of how you see the future of the healthcare industry, or maybe it's even what you'd like to see in this space as we progress?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we all love to be clairvoyants, especially if it's self-serving. Um, but you know, being joking aside, I think what I see is in healthcare that there is already, but I think it will continue that um, people will want to get greater return on their investment. And honestly, I feel like as consumers, there will be this reputational vector that we're going to push, right? So for instance, most farmers, I mean, like for instance, the folks who are making all these weight loss drugs, I mean, they're making money fist over fist. So if I go and have a conversation with them, like people at Nova, as example, I'd say, hey, look, you could use blockchain for better compliance, transparency, things like this. They will probably listen to me, but in the back of their head, they're like, we're already making so much money, right? So I think in those cases, in the cases where the competitive, like the market kind of competitiveness isn't really yet a factor, I think this idea of consumer pressure, particularly when it comes to if you're using somebody's data like with AI, I think I see that as becoming more relevant. And then in turn, this idea, and there's a number of companies doing this idea that, well, if we're going to use people's data, particularly health data, how do we equitably at least measure it, inform them, and possibly incentivize them, right? So I think that can lead and hopefully will lead to using DLT as part of the tech stack and using tokenization. Again, doesn't have to be overt tokens. Like I'm not a big believer that every one of these things that we're describing means, you know, you're going to have your like Hashpack wallet or MetaMask wallet that you're going to be receiving ETH or something. No, I think it could be, you know, in terms of like the fulfillment could be in terms of like in-kind kinds of benefits. It could be in terms of US dollars. It could be in terms of an annuity. I mean, there's 1,001 ways. It could be like a Delta Airlines mileage point type of scheme. So we can be a lot more creative than just this, well, you know, usability of a wallet is going to be a nightmare. I agree with that. So I kind of see that happening. But the other thing that I see is what I was intimating is that I definitely see a lot more happening around clinical research with AI and this question of like, we need to have consent for using this data. You know, it's like any clinical trial, the very first question is, do you have consent from the data owners? So if you're going to, especially with AI and Gen AI, how do we prove the consent? How do we track data owners' rights? How do we show deviations from the source of truth? I see that, honestly, I see that being something, a conversation that people will listen to with some urgency, but mainly in the context of the fact that they want to lower the costs of doing this research. Because the research, this AI, these LLMs are very, very costly. The data itself, to get to the data and then build proper training data sets and LLMs is costly. Therefore, people are going to be incentivized by lowering the cost of getting to the data. Therefore, this conversation of, hey, how do we prove that this decentralized data is real? So that's a little bit of what we're working. It's a little bit like looking forward, but that's kind of what I see. I mean, I think there's a lot of other things. That there's some really cool startups that are doing interesting things around kind of user incentivization for various things, including like steps, like people like Sweatcoin or how you sit properly. You name it. There's all kinds of things. But in my mind, those are maybe like things that require some network effects to be in place first, versus clinical research and using AI, which I think is already happening.
Yeah, as soon as you said, you know, sitting up straight, I kind of like propped myself up a little bit. Yeah, hey, if there's an incentive to helping, you know, get better posture and be more healthy, definitely. We had Steppen down here. It just didn't have the right kind of, or wrong timing of the market, and they were still working their way towards, I guess, less on the Ponzi-nomic side of things. And look, I don't mind that that's a way that you might start, and then you deliver value after. It's like forward selling of value. But you mentioned something there about really interesting, away from the blockchain space, but that the idea around incentives and whether it's in kind, it does not have to be tokens. I've seen ones where, coming from the finance space, crowdsourcing technologies to bring together data. So for example, earnings estimates, the estimates of earnings in companies, they found that crowdsourced data beats Wall Street analysts 60 to 70% of the time. Some research was out there that did that. And when you have enough of this wisdom of the crowds, it was through gamification. You got fake internet points, gamification, but then there was also things for companies to incentivize their staff, if they're working in that finance space, to contribute. Why? Because you would see detailed averages and more statistical details for your staff, your researchers, but then you would see aggregates from the others. And if you contributed, you got these aggregates. If you didn't contribute, well, obviously you're just a casual observer. So I think there's a lot of ways that we can design not just token, but other interesting incentives. Coming from our data background, I'm sure that, there's a lot of things that we can share with each other. But for now, we like to ask this question last, about community. And like, I don't know what the community is like over there when it comes to blockchain and DLT and whatnot, but to a core, what does community mean to you guys, to yourself, and to the team over there?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. As I was saying a little bit earlier, we are big believers and adopters of kind of open technologies, open source. That is by definition collaborative. One of the things that I have liked about blockchain and DLT is that really one of its underlying premises is that you're bringing in people who don't necessarily know each other, definitely don't trust each other implicitly, and yet that they're working together as part of a community or network effect. And then you're using things like tokenization and some other fancy technologies to make it happen. So we fundamentally kind of get that. But when it comes to Acoer specifically, one of the things that we're, if you like, one area of community that we're very actively involved in is the Hedera builder community. I'm one of the leads for what is called the HBAR Foundry, which is really a decentralized group of builders. So we get together, every Friday and 11 o'clock Eastern. In the US, we get together on Tuesdays. I think it's 8 a.m. Australia time for Asia Pacific. We've grown significantly. We do town halls. We have projects that we're lining up for developers within the Hedera community. But all of it really is to recognize that there's an opportunity for us to grow the community, but grow it not just in terms of numbers, but intelligence, influence. But there's also an existential threat of this space disappearing if we don't work together. And it's really the conversation you and I had at the very beginning. It's a very nascent space. It's very small. This is a time to collaborate and be together as opposed to try and compete and like try and, take the tiniest sliver and kind of subdivide that. That's really wrong thinking, wrong mentality. So very much part of the Hedera community. I also lead the privacy and healthcare fund for the HBAR Association. And through that come across all kinds of startups and some enterprises who are either investing in or want to invest in this space. And that allows me and Acoer to connect to that community, if you like, the incubator and the granting organization community. But really the net of it though is very much, very, very actively involved within the Hedera community. We are also involved in some areas of healthcare standards. Like I lead one of the IEEE standards bodies for interoperability of health data and things like this. But I would say that the bigger focus for us, and where there's more of a need for leadership and community, at least at this time, is around this DLT space, and that's really where we're actively involved.
I love it. That there's definitely a whole lot of stuff that I'm sure people in this space will want to reach out to you on if they're going to do that. And we'll certainly, chat some more about this kind of stuff because you tick a lot of things that cross over with the work I'm doing. But yeah, people want to reach out. What's the best way? LinkedIn, Twitter, elsewhere?
Yeah. I mean, LinkedIn, Jim Nasr, Twitter at JNasr. You could go to our website, Aceor.com, and put contact us. Yeah, we're pretty accessible. We like communicating with people like yourself, who also have kind of the right mentality and are seeing, not just seeing the bigger picture, but actually want to do something about it. I think there are a lot of what's a nice way of putting it? Speculators, a lot of talkers. We are more of the doers category.
Love it. Well, whether it's talkers or doers or the people that are listening into this, hopefully we convince them of there is a lot of positivity here. We'll put the show notes in the link. People will have seen all the screenshots of, the products that you've got and other things. I saw, the blog and some of the news announcements like MyTerra and stuff. So we'll throw that up there. But for now, Jim, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate your time.